I stand at the door, the sound of my key drowned out by the loud pounding on the door. A woman's voice yells from outside, "I know you're in there." As I open the door, I'm confronted by a young woman filled with anger and pain. She tells me that my wife Sarah is having an affair with her boyfriend. At this moment, my world is turned upside down. Let's formally listen to today's story of infidelity. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support. The sound of my key. The loud pounding on our front door drowned out the sound of turning the lock. I froze my hand on the doorknob, wondering who could be causing such a scene. "Open up. I know you are in there," a woman's voice yelled. I swung the door open to see a young woman with wild eyes and clenched fists. "Can I help you?" "Are you Robert, Sarah's husband?" She did not wait for a response, shoving past me into the entrance sewer. "Yes, I'm Robert." "Who are you? And what is this about?" She turned to face me. "I'm Laura Wilson and your wife is sleeping with my boyfriend." The world ticked on its axis. "What, there must be an error." Laura's laughter was bitter. "No mistake. I have proof." She dug into her bag and pulled out a few photos. "Here. See for yourself," with trembling hands. I took the photographs. Each one was like a knife in the gut. My wife, Sarah, was locked in passionate embraces with a young man I had never seen before. The timestamps indicated they were recent taken, over the last few weeks. "Who is he?" I managed to choke Daniel Stewart. "My boyfriend." Okay. Ex-boyfriend." Laura's rage appeared to subside, leaving behind drop pain. "He's one of her students. Can you believe it? A goddamn student." I collapsed onto the couch, my legs unable to support me. "How long has it been going on?" Laura shrugged. "Several months, so far as I can tell. I only found out last week when I noticed some texts on Daniel's phone." "How are you sure it's Sarah?" "My Sarah. Unless your wife has an identical twin who is also a university professor." "Yeah, I'm sure." I stared at the photos, attempting to reconcile the woman in them with the woman I believed I knew. "Why are you telling me this?" Laura's eyes flashed. "Because it has to stop now." I tried confronting Daniel, but he just told me lies. So I figured if her husband knew, I might be able to end it. I finished and she nodded. "Look, I'm sorry to have to break it to you like this, but don't you want to know?" My mind is reeling. "Yes, thank you for informing me." Laura hesitated. "What are you planning to do?" "I'm not sure yet, but I will handle it." She nodded, appearing satisfied. "Good. They both deserve whatever happens to them." She approached the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "I'm sorry, Robert." "Really?" As the door closed behind her, I was left alone with the broken pieces of my life. The photos felt like they were burning my skin, but I couldn't stop looking at them. How could Sarah have done this to me regarding our marriage, regarding her career? I took out my phone, my finger hovering over Sarah's name. No, I could not confront her. Not yet. Not until I had additional proof. More information. I needed to be wise about this. I went through my contacts and found the number for James Walker, a private investigator I'd worked with on a software security case a few years ago. He responded on the third ring. "James, this is Robert Brown. I need your help with something delicate." "Robert, it has been a long time since we last spoke. What's happening?" I took a deep breath. "I need you to gather evidence about my wife's affair." There was a pause at the other end. "Damn, Robert, I'm sorry to hear that. Are you certain?" "I have photographic evidence, but I need more texts, emails and video if possible. I'd like to nail this thing shut." "All right, that's something I can do. But Robert, are you certain you want to go down this road? Sometimes it's best not to know everything." I gripped the phone tighter. "I'm sure I need to know the full scope of what's been happening behind my back." James sighed. Okay. I will start digging. Give me a few weeks. I will be in touch. As I hung up, my gaze was drawn to a framed photograph of Sarah and me on our wedding day. The joy on our faces seemed like a cruel joke. Now I turned the framed face down, unable to look at it any longer. I trusted you. I whispered to the empty room and you threw everything away. The anger began to burn slowly in my chest. Sarah had no idea what was going to happen. But she would. Oh, she would. The following 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. I went about my daily routine while carrying the crushing weight of betrayal. Sarah noticed something was wrong, but I dismissed her concerns with vague explanations about work, stress, dress. Every smile, touch and I love you from her felt like a knife in my gut. How many times had she returned home to me after being with him? How many lies did she tell? I threw myself into work, staying late at the office to avoid being home. While there, I kept a close eye on Sarah, taking note of every text, phone call and unexplained absence. It was torture, but I needed to keep up appearances until James presented the evidence. Finally, after 16 agonizing days, my phone vibrated with text from James. We have what you need, meet at the usual location. My heart raced as I responded on my way. I told Sarah I had a late meeting and left. The usual location was a quiet coffee shop where James and I had met during a long-ago case. He was already present. When I arrived, a thick manila envelope sat on the table in front of him. "Hello, Robert," he greeted me. His expression was grim. "How are you holding up?" I slid into the booth across from him. "Been better. What did you have?" James pushed the envelope towards me. It is all in there: emails, texts, photos and even video clips. And Robert, it is bad. Worse than you expected. With shaky hands, I opened the envelope and began sorting through the contents: emails describing their secret meetings, text messages containing pet names and declarations of love. More photographs. Some were so explicit that I had to look away. How long, I managed to ask. James's voice was gentle. Based on what I discovered, at least 6 months. Possibly longer. 6 months. Half a year of deception and betrayal. I felt sick. "There's more." James spoke quietly. "Daniel Stewart is the guy she's with. He isn't just any student. He's one of her graduate students. She serves on his thesis committee." The implication struck me like a freight train. She might lose her job over this. James nodded. "Absolutely. It is a clear violation of university policy with serious ethical implications." I leafed through more evidence, each new revelation fueling my rage. "What about him? This Daniel kid?" "According to what I've heard, he has a reputation for being charming. A bit of a player. But Sarah seems to believe it's the real deal. There are emails discussing a possible future together after she leaves you." That was the last straw. I slammed my fist on the table, rattling our coffee cups. "She will, no doubt." James leaned back and studied me. "What are you to do, Robert?" I took a deep breath, hoping to calm the rage coursing through me. "I'm going to destroy her. Both of them. They want to ruin my life. I will return the favor. Robert, I know you're hurting, but take care. Revenge can be a dangerous game." I returned his gaze, my resolve hardening. "I appreciate your concern, James, but I know what I'm doing." Sarah made her decision. Now she must face the consequences. James sighed. All right. It's your decision. Just don't do anything irreversible. Okay." I nodded, collecting the evidence. "Thank you for everything, James. I mean it." As I left the coffee shop, my thoughts were already racing with plans. First stop, the university ethics committee. Sarah had no idea what was about to strike her. The next morning, I called the universe and asked for an urgent meeting with the ethics committee. I was connected to Drive Emily Thompson, the committee chair. Mr. Brown, this is Drive Thompson. I understand that you have a sensitive topic to discuss. Yes, Drive Thompson. It relates to my wife, Professor Sarah Green, and one of her students. I have evidence of an inappropriate relationship, which I believe is against university policy. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. That's a serious allegation. Mr. Brown will need to see the evidence. Of course. When can we meet? Given the gravity of the accusation, I can convene the committee this afternoon, 3 p.m. I will be there the remainder of the morning. As I prepared my presentation, time seemed to fly by 2:45. I was out of the committee room. Her laptop and file folders are at the ready. Drive Thompson greeted me. Her face was a mask of professional concern. Mr. Brown, thank you for coming. The committee is ready for you. I walked into the room and faced a panel of 5 stern-faced academics. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, I began. I wish I was here in better circumstances. Drive Thompson nodded. Please present your evidence over the next hour. I presented the case against Sarah and Daniel. Emails, texts and photos all paint a negative picture of that affair. The committee members' expressions ranged from shock to disgust. As I walked them through the timeline, as you can see, I concluded that this relationship has been going on for at least 6 months. During this time, Professor Brown has remained on Mr. Stewart's thesis committee, raising serious concerns about academic integrity. Dotton removed her glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose. Mr. Brown, I'd like to thank you for bringing this to our attention. This is a serious violation of university policies and ethical standards. Another committee member, a silver-haired man whom I came to know as Drive Michael, spoke up. Mr. Brown, what do you hope to achieve by presenting this to us? I met his gaze steadily. I believe the university should take appropriate action. My wife's actions have jeopardized her trust in the institution's integrity. Drive Thompson nodded. Naturally, we'll need to conduct our own investigation. However, based on what you've shown us, Professor Brown and Mr. Stewart are likely to face serious consequences. I understand, I replied. I am ready to fully cooperate with any investigation. As the meeting concluded, I felt a sense of stern satisfaction. The first domino had fallen. Sarah's carefully constructed world was about to collapse around her. The call arrived 3 days later. Drive Thompson's voice was full of regret. Mr. Brown, we have finished our initial investigation. The evidence is conclusive. We will terminate Professor Brown's employment effective immediately. Mr. Stewart's academic future is also being reviewed. I see, I replied. Despite the inner turmoil, my voice remained steady. Thank you for informing me. We will hold a formal hearing this afternoon to inform Professor Brown and Mr. Stewart of our decision. Given your involvement in bringing this to light, would you like to be present? Part of me wanted to say no to avoid seeing Alana's expression when her world crumbled. However, there is also a darker side, the part consumed by rage and betrayal. I wanted to witness it firsthand. Yes, I heard myself say I will be there. The hearing was scheduled for 4 p.m. I arrived early. My stomach is churning with anticipation and dread. Dr. Thompson ushered me into a small anteroom next to the main conference room. They're unaware. You're here, she explained. We decided it was best to inform them of the decision first. You can see through the one-way glass if you want. I nodded and took a seat by the window. Sarah and Daniel entered the conference room a few minutes later, looking confused and nervous. My fists clenched when I saw them together. The way they moved around each other felt natural. Dr. Thompson and the other members of the committee filed in with grave expressions. Professor Brown and Mr. Stewart, thank you for coming. Please take a seat. Sarah furrowed her brow. What is this about? Emily, your message stated that it was urgent. Dr. Thompson's voice was calm and professional. Sarah Daniel, the ethics committee investigated your relationship. We have irrefutable evidence that you have been involved in an inappropriate sexual relationship for the past 6 months, during which Professor Brown continued to serve on Mr. Stewart's thesis committee. Sarah's face lost its color. Daniel looked like he was sick. That is not true. Sarah stammered. Who has told you this? We have emails, text messages, and photographic evidence. Michael intervened. There's no point denying it. Sarah's eyes darted around the room, terrified. This is a misunderstanding. Daniel and I were close. He is a promising student. I have been mentoring him. Dr. Thompson's expression hardened. Sarah, please do not insult our intelligence. The evidence is explicit and damning. Your actions are a serious violation of universal policy and ethical standards. Daniel finally discovered his voice. It was voluntary. We are both adults. You cannot punish us for falling in love. A wave of disgust spread through the committee members. Dr. Thompson fixed Daniel with a steely glare. Mr. Stewart, your love has jeopardized the integrity of this institution and called into question the legitimacy of your entire academic career. Regarding consent, the power imbalance in your relationship makes it a very murky area. Sarah appeared to crumple in on herself. What will happen now? Professor Brown, your employment with the university has been terminated effective immediately. Mr. Stewart, your academic standing is being reviewed. At the very least, you must find a new thesis advisor and repeat any coursework or research completed under Professor Brown's supervision. You cannot do this, Sarah cried. My entire career, everything I've worked for. Dr. Thompson's voice was icy. You did it, Sarah. You and Mr. Stewart have made your choices. Now you must face the consequences. I had seen enough. I exited the anteroom and entered the conference room. Sarah's head snapped up and her eyes widened with shock and horror. Robert, what are you doing here? I looked at her. This woman I once loved and trusted is now a stranger to me. I am the one who presented the evidence to the committee. Sarah. She recoiled as if I had hit her. You. But why does it matter? You lied to me. Betrayed me. We threw away our marriage. For what? Some flirtation with a student. I turned to Daniel, who appeared to want to disappear. Was it worthwhile to sacrifice your academic career for a married woman twice your age? Sarah found her fire and rose to her feet. You had no rights. This is my life, my career, and this was our marriage. I fired back, but that didn't prevent you from destroying it, did it? Dr. Thompson cleared her throat. I believe we're done here. Professor Brown. Mr. Stewart, you will receive official documentation regarding today's decision. Please clear your offices by the end of the week. As the committee dispersed, I was left with Sarah and Daniel. The anger that had been simmering for weeks finally erupted. I hope you are happy together. I spat because you had lost everything else. And Sarah, this is only the beginning. I'm going to make you regret the day you considered cheating on me. Sarah's face wrinkled. Robert. Please, we can discuss this. I made an error. I am aware of this. But don't throw away our entire lives together. I laughed a harsh and bitter sound. Our lives together. You discarded that the moment you decided to have a relationship with your student. We're finished. Sarah, enjoy the results of your actions. I felt a sense of grim satisfaction as I walked out, leaving Sarah in tears and Daniel stunned. Phase 1 of my revenge was complete, but I was far from done. Sarah and Daniel had no idea what would happen next. The family courthouse stood before me, a stark reminder of how quickly my life had fallen apart. I straightened my tie and braced myself for the battle ahead. My lawyer, Michael Anderson, was standing beside me, briefcase in hand. Are you ready for this? Robert Michael inquired, his eyes shot. I nodded. Let us conclude this, We pushed through the heavy doors. The aroma of polished wooden tension filled my nostrils. Sarah was already present, huddled with her lawyer in the corner. She looked up as we entered. Her face was a mask of defiance and fear. "Robert," she called out, taking a step toward me. "Can we please talk?" I raised my hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Save it for the judge." Sarah, her lawyer, a stylish woman in a power suit, approached us. "Hello, Mr. Brown. My name's Rebecca Hol. I am representing Mrs. Brown in these proceedings. I hope we can settle this amicably." Michael stepped forward. His voice is cool. "Miss Lane, given the circumstances, I believe we are well past amicable. We will see you inside." As we took our seats, I couldn't help but notice Daniel disappearing into the back of the courtroom. My blood was boiling at the sight of him, but I forced myself to concentrate. "All rise for the Honorable Judge, Karen Hayes." The BFF announced. Judge Hayes, a stern FA-head woman in her 60s, took her seat and looked around the room with sharp eyes. "We are here today for Robert and Sarah Brown's divorce proceedings. I understand that this is a fault-based divorce case." Michael stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We are filing on the grounds of adultery." Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible from across the room. Judge Hayes nodded. "Very well. Mr. Anderson, please present your case over the next hour." Michael presented the evidence of Sarah's affair in great detail. Emails, text messages, and photos all flashed across the screen, each one piercing my heart. "As you can see, Your Honor," Michael came to a conclusion. "Mrs. Brown had a long, deliberate affair with her student, Daniel Stewart. This affair not only ended her marriage, but it also cost her job and professional reputation." Judge Hayes turned to Sarah's attorney. "Miss Lane, what is your response?" Rebecca Lane stood and smoothed her skirt. "While my client accepts responsibility for her actions, we can put Mr. Brown's asset division proposal to the test. Sarah made significant contributions to the marriage, both financially and as a homemaker. She should not be left destitute because of a single error." I couldn't contain my bitter laugh. "One mistake. Consider 6 months of lies and betrayal." Judge Hayes fixed me with a stern expression. "Mr. Brown, please, Miss Lane, continue." Rebecca pressed on regardless of Emma's lapse in judgment. "We request joint custody. Sarah has been an exceptional mother." Michael rose to his feet in an instant. "Given Mrs. Brown's demonstrated lack of judgment and the upheaval in her life, we believe sole custody is best for Mr. Brown." The arguments went back and forth, with each side making their case. Throughout it all, I kept my gaze fixed on Sarah, watching her struggle under the weight of her actions. Finally, Judge Hayes raised a hand. "I have heard enough. Given the evidence presented and the severity of Mrs. Brown's infidelity, I'm inclined to rule in favor of Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown will keep the family home in primary custody of Emma. Mrs. Brown's visitation rights are to be determined. Mr. Brown's proposal regarding asset division remains unchanged." Sarah gasped, her face contorting. "But that's it. Where am I supposed to go? What about Emma?" Judge Hayes' voice was firm. "Mrs. Brown, you should have considered these questions before having an affair with your student. My decision stands. The court is adjourned." As the gavel fell, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I turned to Michael and shook his hand. "Thank you for everything." He nodded with a slight smile on his face. "You're welcome, Robert. It's not over yet, but this is a huge victory." I looked over at Sarah, who was sobbing into her hands as Rebecca attempted to console her. Part of me wanted to go to her and offer her some comfort, but then I remembered the photographs. This happened while I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I glared at her side. The betrayal. My resolve hardened. As we left the courtroom, I caught sight of Daniel. His face was pale and drawn. Our eyes met and I could see the fear in them. Good. He was starting to realize the consequences of his actions outside. I took a deep breath of fresh air and felt as if I could finally breathe again. The divorce wasn't finalized yet, but I had won this round. Sarah had taken so much from me, but now I was taking it all back. The next phase of my plan unfolded over the next few weeks. I sat at my computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard, ready to send the first email. This was at the point of no return. Are you sure about this? I muttered to myself. The memory of Sarah's betrayal shattered my resolve. I pressed send. Within hours, my phone was constantly buzzing. Sarah's co-workers, mutual friends, and even a few of my co-workers, all of them shocked, disgusted, full of questions. I received a call from Drive Thompson, Sarah's former department head. Robert, is what is written in that email true? I sighed, pretending reluctance. I am afraid so. Amelia, I really wish it wasn't, my God. I was aware of the affair, of course, but the remaining student's grade manipulation. I can't believe this. Initially I couldn't either, but the evidence does not lie. I hung up. Another call came through. This time I tipped off Emma Collins, a local journalist. Mr. Brown, Emma Collins, of the Daily Chronicle. I have received your email. Is this a good time to talk? I smiled grimly. Now that's perfect. What do you want to know? Over the next hour, I spilled all the juicy details about Sarah and Daniel's affair, the power imbalance, the ethical violations, and the possible academic fraud. Emma was salivating by the time I finished. Mr. Green, this is explosive mind. If I could you be my guest, the truth must come out. I ended the call. I saw a text from Daniel's ex-girlfriend, Laura Wilson. I just saw the news. Damn. Robert, you do not mess around. I typed back. They made their decisions. They are now dealing with the fallout. Sarah's photo appeared on the front page of the Daily Chronicle. The following morning, an illicit affair between professors rocked the university. The headline screamed. My telephone rang. It was Sarah. How could you? She sobbed. Do you know what you did? I kept my voice cool. I've only told you the truth, Sarah. Something you should have tried. I have lost everything, my job, friends, and reputation. And whose fault is it? You did it to yourself. What about Emma? Have you thought about how this will affect her? That struck a nerve. Don't bring Emma into this. You should have thought about her before you began screwing your student. I hung up my hand, shaking Emma. My sweet, innocent daughter is caught in the crossfire between her mother's betrayal and her father's vengeance. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to see Laura standing there with a sympathetic expression on her face. Hey, she replied softly. I saw the article. I thought you might need a friend. I took a step back and let her in. Thanks. It's been intense. Laura sat down on the couch, her eyes fixed on my face. How are you holding up, really? I sank down beside her, completely exhausted. I do not know. Part of me feels vindicated, while the rest feels like she finished. I nodded pretty much. I get it. When I learned about Daniel and Sarah, I wanted to burn down the entire world. But Robert, are you certain this is the right way? I met her gaze. My jaw had set. They deserve it. Laura, both of them. She exhaled. Maybe. But what cost? Before I could respond, my phone vibrated with a news alert. I opened it and discovered a video of Daniel looking haggard and desperate, being approached by reporters outside his apartment. Mr. Stewart, is it true that you were involved with several professors? Had you ever blackmailed anyone for grades? Daniel pushed through them, his face a mask of panic. No comment. Leave me alone. I showed the video to Laura. A grim satisfaction settled in my chest. See, they are receiving exactly what they deserve. Laura observed her troubled expression. And what do you deserve, Robert? Peace. Healing. Because, let me tell you, this doesn't look like either. Her words struck me harder than I expected. What did I deserve? What did I want anymore? Laura left promising to check in with me later, and I was left alone with my thoughts. The satisfaction of revenge was present, but beneath it all, a hollow ache persisted. Will any of this actually make things right? I looked at Emma's photo on the mantel. Her smile is bright and carefree. I whispered, I'm doing this for us. But even as I said it, a small voice in my head questioned whether it was true. The summons arrived on Tuesday morning. The legal jargon barely registered. As I scanned the document, Sarah and Daniel sued me for defamation and emotional distress. I should have seen it coming, but the reality still hit me like a punch in the gut. I called Michael Lind immediately. Did you see this? I just got my copy. He replied in a calm voice. Don't worry, Robert. This is a desperate move and they know it. But can they do it? After everything, Michael's chuckle was dry. They can try, but given the evidence, this lawsuit is doomed to fail. In fact, this may work in our favor. I frowned. How is this so? It demonstrates that they are not taking responsibility for their actions. Furthermore, it opens them up to countersuits. Trust me. We've got this. I hung up. Another call came through. It was Laura. Hello. I just heard about the lawsuit. You okay? I exhaled. Yes, I suppose. Just when I thought things were over, Watson Company, I could bring you some takeout. We could strategize. I paused. Laura had become an unexpected source of comfort throughout this ordeal, but I wasn't sure I was ready for company. Thank you, but I believe I need some time to process this. I get it. Please don't shut everyone out. You don't need to go through this alone. Her words remained with me as I prepared for the first hearing. The courthouse was becoming far too familiar, the weight of eyes on me as I walked in. Michael by my side. Sarah and Daniel were already present. They were huddled with their lawyer, Rebecca Lane. Sarah looked up as we entered. Her eyes were red-rimmed and defiant. Robert, she called out, can we please talk? This has gone too far. I started to brush past her, but Michael grabbed my arm. Hear her out. It might be useful. Reluctantly, I turned to face my soon-to-be ex-wife. What is it? Sarah. She took a shaky breath. The lawsuit. It's not what I was looking for. But you have given us no choice. Robert. You've destroyed our lives over. What a mistake. I felt my temper flare. An error. Is that what you are calling 6 months of lying and cheating? I know I harmed you. Sarah pressed on. But this humiliating us in public, ruining our careers. What about Emma? Have you considered how this affects her? The mention of our daughter struck me like a physical blow. Don't bring Emma into this. You should have thought about her before sleeping with Daniel, your student, who had been silent up until now. Please step forward. Mr. Brown, we don't deny what we did was wrong. But what about your actions? I interrupted him with a harsh laugh. My actions? That is an impressive sum coming from you, kid. You intentionally pursued a married woman. You're a professor. No less. So you want to talk about actions? Rebecca Lane intervened. Her voice is cool. Mr. Brown, I would advise you to be careful what you say. Any word can be used in court. Michael stepped into his presence of common force, and I would advise your clients to withdraw this frivolous lawsuit before they embarrass themselves further. Please excuse us. We have a hearing to attend from inside the courtroom. Judge Karen Hayes appeared tired when she called the session to order counselors present your cases. Rebecca Lane went first. Her voice was dripping with rehearsed sympathy. My clients have suffered significant emotional distress and reputational harm as a result of Mr. Brown's vindictive actions. while they accept responsibility for their actions. Mr. Brown's public humiliation goes far beyond what is reasonable. Judge Hayes turned to Michael. Mr. Anderson, what's your response? Michael held his posture confidently. Your Honor, this lawsuit is nothing more than Mrs. Brown and Mr. Stewart's desperate attempt to escape the consequences of their actions. Every piece of information made public was verifiably accurate. My client cannot be held accountable for the natural consequences of their decisions. The arguments went back and forth throughout the proceedings. Each side presents their case. I kept my gaze fixed on Sarah and Daniel, watching them squirm under the weight of their actions being exposed once more. Finally, Judge Hayes raised a hand. I have heard enough. Mr. Anderson is right. The information made public, while damaging, was accurate. Mrs. Brown, Mr. Stewart, your personal and professional difficulties are the direct result of your actions. This lawsuit was dismissed. Sarah gasped, her face contorting. Daniel looked like he was sick. Judge Hayes wasn't done. Furthermore, I believe this is a frivolous lawsuit. Mr. Brown, if you wish, you may counter-sue for legal fees and additional damages. The court would consider such a motion favorably. I turned to Michael, who gave a slight nod. Your Honor, I said this while standing. I believe enough damage has been done. I will not pursue further legal action at this time. As we left the courtroom, I experienced a range of emotions. I was relieved that the lawsuit had failed, satisfaction with Sarah and Daniel's defeat, but also lingering unease. When is it enough? Laura waited outside, smiling supportively. Hello, warrior. How did it go? I sighed, suddenly feeling the weight of the previous few months. We've won again, but it no longer feels like winning. Laura nodded with understanding in her eyes. Perhaps it's time to stop fighting and begin healing. We walked away from the courthouse. I considered her words. The revenge was sweet, but the aftertaste was bitter. Maybe it was time to start rebuilding my life on supporting Emma rather than tearing down Sarah and Daniel. But when I looked back and saw Sarah sobbing into Daniel's shoulder, a small part of me whispered that there was still work to be done. The war hadn't ended yet. The morning sun shone through the blinds as I sat at my desk poring over financial documents. Months of digging had culminated in this moment. I picked up my phone and called Michael. Michael, it's Robert. I found something. What is it? Michael. His voice crackled through the speaker. Hidden assets. Sarah has been squirreling away money for years. Offshore accounts, dummy corporations. The works. Michael let out a low whistle. That is a big deal. Robert, how long are we talking? Millions. And that is not all. I discovered some questionable transactions involving Daniel and several professors. It appears to be fraudulent. Damn. We need to move fast. I'll schedule a meeting with the forensic accountant. Can you come into the office this afternoon? I glanced at my watch. I'll be there at 2. As I hung up, a text from Laura appeared on my screen. Hey, how are things going? Do you want to grab some lunch? I hesitated before responding. This is a rain check. Something big just happened with the case. She responded quickly. Not a problem. Good luck. At exactly 2 p.m., I arrived at Michael's office. Sarah, the forensic accountant with sharp eyes, had already arrived. Michael gave me a firm handshake. Robert, this is Sarah Chen. She's the best in the industry. Sarah nodded. Mr. Brown, I have reviewed the documents you sent over. Your wife has woven quite the web. We spent the next few hours navigating the financial maze Sarah had created. With each revelation, my rage grew. So she has been planning this for years? I inquired. My voice died. Sarah nodded. It seems so. The earliest hidden account dates from the start of your marriage. Michael leaned forwards. Robert, with this evidence, we can prosecute her for financial fraud on top of everything else. As for Daniel's involvement, we must notify the university. I finished exactly. This is no longer limited to your divorce. We're looking into possible criminal charges. I stood up and paced the room. Do it all of it. I want every penny included in the divorce settlement. Michael looked at Daniel and me. I felt a grim smile spread across my lips, allowing to burn too. The following few days were a blur of legal motions and meetings. I sat across from Sarah and a lawyer in a mediation room, watching the color fade from her face as Michael explained her findings. This is ridiculous, Sarah sputtered. Robert, you are making things up right now. I leaned forwards. Am I Sarah? The Cayman Islands account number is 870.4. Open on June 15th, 10 years ago. Do any of these sound familiar? Her eyes widened with shock. How did you do? It does not matter how. What matters is that every penny is now out in the open. Sarah's lawyer, Rebecca, attempted to regain control. Mr. Brown, these are serious allegations. We will need time to review and respond. Michael smiled coldly. Take as much time as you need. However, the forensic accountant's report has already been submitted to both the court and the IRS. Sarah's face wrinkled. Robert, please, please, you cannot do this. What about Emma? Don't bring Emma into this. I snapped. You should have thought about her before you began hiding money and sleeping with your student. As we exited the mediation room, I felt a mix of contentment and exhaustion. The end was within sight, but at what cost? Later that evening, as I was nursing a drink in my quiet house, my phone rang. It was Detective James Walker. Robert, it's James. Are you sitting down? Because I have some news about your son, Daniel. I straightened up. What is it? Remember the transactions you discovered? Well, they were only the tip of the iceberg. This kid has been running a grade-fixing scheme across half the university. I almost dropped my glass. What yet? Blackmail? Bribery? This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. Guess who was helping him? Cover it up. Sarah. I breathed and got it all in one. Robert, this is huge. Like a federal investigation. Big. As I hung up, I felt a strange combination of emotions: triumph, yes, but also a deep, wrenching sadness. How had it gotten to this? I dialed Laura's number before I could think twice about it. Robert, is everything okay? Her voice was warm, concerned. Not really. Can you come over? I could really use a friend right now. Laura sat across from me on the couch an hour later, listening as I told her everything that had happened. She whispered, God, Robert. As I finished, that is a lot. I nodded suddenly, exhausted. I wanted vengeance. Laura, I wanted them to feel the pain I was feeling. But now she reached out and squeezed my hand. Now you're wondering if it was worthwhile. Yeah, I mean they deserve what they get. However, this will also destroy him as well. Laura remained quiet for a moment. Robert, you cannot control their actions. You can only control your response. Maybe perhaps it is time to focus on your and Emma's healing. As Laura left that night, her words echoed in my mind. The war was almost won, but at what cost? And what exactly would victory look like in the end? The courthouse was packed. Reporters jostled for position. As Sarah and Daniel were allowed in, I sat in the back and watched the scene unfold. Judge Karen Hayes brought the court to order. We're here today to hear Sarah Green and Daniel Stewart's sentences for academic fraud, financial crimes, and blackmail. Ada Bennett, you may proceed. Victoria Bennett, the assistant district attorney, stood. Her voice rang out clearly and powerfully. Your Honor, the state has discovered a web of corruption that extends far beyond a simple affair. Mr. Stewart, with the aid and complicity of Professor Brown, engaged in a systematic scheme of grade fixing, blackmail, and fraud that jeopardized the university's integrity. Sarah's attorney jumped up objection. Your Honor, my client was not aware of the scope of Mr. Stewart's activities. Judge Hayes raised his eyebrow. Overruled. Continue. Bennett. Victoria nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. Daniel Stewart has been involved in affairs with at least 5 professors over the last 3 years, and he has used these relationships to manipulate grades and academic standing. But it did not end there. Mr. Stewart also blackmailed other professors, threatening to reveal personal information unless they met his demands. A murmur echoed throughout the courtroom. Sarah's shoulders slumped as the full extent of Daniel's actions became apparent. Victoria continued. Professor Brown, far from being an unwitting victim, actively assisted Mr. Stewart in concealing his activities. She used her position and power to silence potential whistleblowers and alter university records. I watched Daniel's face contort with rage. He suddenly leapt to his feet. This is not true. Sarah knew everything. She was the one who originally came up with the idea. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Judge Hayes banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Stewart, please sit down immediately. Sarah whirled on Daniel. You lie, little snake. A snake. I never have enough. Judge Hayes's voice broke through the den. Mr. Stewart, Professor Brown, control yourselves or I will hold you both in contempt. As the commotion subsided, I noticed Detective James Walker slip into the courtroom. He nodded at me before taking a seat near the front. Victoria Bennett cleared her throat. Your Honor, in light of Mr. Stewart's outburst, the state would like to call a surprise witness. Detective James U.E.L. Walker. Sarah's lawyer stood up again. Objection. We were not informed about this witness. Judge Hayes thought for a moment. Given the newly disclosed information, I will allow it. Detective Walker, please take the stand. James approached the witness box. His face was grim. After being sworn in, he started speaking. Your Honor, my investigation into Mr. Stewart and Professor Brown's activities revealed a pattern of behavior that goes back even further than we previously suspected. I have evidence that Professor Brown participated in similar schemes at her previous university. Sarah's face became ashen. I leaned forward, stunned by this new revelation. James continued. Furthermore, we discovered that Mr. Stewart did not initiate this scheme, as he claims. Emails and financial records showed that Professor Brown approached him with the idea shortly after he enrolled in her class. The courtroom was completely silent. Now all eyes are on Sarah. She appeared to shrink in her seat. The weight of her lies eventually crushed her. Judge Hayes's voice was steel. Bennett, do you wish to change the charges? Victoria nodded yes, Your Honor. In light of the new evidence, the state intends to charge Sarah Green as the primary defendant. In this case, the remainder of the hearing passed in a blur. By the end, Daniel had turned state's witness against Sarah in exchange for a lesser sentence. Sarah, faced with overwhelming evidence, accepted a plea deal that would result in her spending significant time in prison. As the courtroom cleared, I came face to face with Sarah for the first time in months. Her eyes appeared hollow. Defeated Robert. She whispered, I'm very sorry for everything. I looked at her. This is the woman I once loved. I'm now a stranger. Sarah, I'm not the one you should apologize to. Think of. Uma. Consider all the students whose life you've impacted. She nodded as the bailiff led her away. Tears streamed down her face outside. Reporters crowded around me. Mr. Brown, how do you feel about the outcome of the trial? I raised a hand. No comment. Please respect my privacy as well as that of my daughters. As I pushed through the crowd, I noticed Laura waiting near my car. Her presence soothed my frayed nerves. Hey, she replied softly. You okay? I shake my head. I do not know it is over, but I do not feel like I've won anything. Laura squeezed my arm. Perhaps winning wasn't the point. Perhaps it was about the truth being revealed. As we drove away from the courthouse, I couldn't get over the feeling that this was both the end and the beginning. The question was, where did I go from here? Months have passed. The media frenzy has died down. Sarah started her prison sentence and Daniel faded into obscurity. I threw myself into being there for Emma, attempting to guide her through the aftermath of her mother's actions. It was a crisp autumn day when I found myself walking through the park. Whilst in thought, a voice interrupted. "My Ray Mr. Brown." "Robert." I turned to find a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She seemed vaguely familiar. "I apologize," I said. "Do I know you?" She laughed softly. "Not really. I am Adultery. I am Emma's English teacher. We had a brief meeting at the last parent-teacher conference." "Miss Turner." "Of course. Realize what had happened." "I apologize. I've been a little distracted lately." "Understandable," she said. "And please call me Isabel. How are you doing? How's Emma doing?" I sighed, allowing myself to open up to this near stranger. "It's been tough. Emma is struggling, but she is strong. Therapy is helping. As for me, I'm taking things day by day." Isabel nodded. "That is all each of us can do. Emma talks a lot about you in class. She's proud of you for how you have handled everything." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "Really? You're doing a good job, Robert. Do not forget to take care of yourself." "Okay." As Isabel walked away, I felt a small spark of something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Later that week, Laura and I met for coffee. She smiled as I approached our regular table. "Well, look at, you are actually smiling. What is the aucus?" I shrugged, feeling a bit self-conscious. No occasion, simply feeling better. I suppose Laura's smile softened. "I'm glad. Robert, you deserve to be happy." We settled into easy conversation, discussing her new job and my most recent software project, anything but the drama of the previous year. As we were finishing up, Laura's expression became serious. "Robert, I've been meaning to talk to you about something," I tensed. "What is it?" "I've been offered a job in California. It's a great opportunity, but I wanted to know how you felt about it." I blinked, surprised by the mix of emotions her words stirred up. "Wow, Laura, that's great. When would you leave next month?" "If I take it, I wanted to make sure you'd be okay. You and Emma have become such a big part of my life." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "WEK miss you. But you can't pass up a great opportunity. We'll be fine." I promise. Laura's eyes welled up. "You've come so far, Robert. I'm proud of you." As we said our goodbyes, I realized that Laura's imminent departure didn't fill me with the dread it might have a few months ago. Instead, I felt a sense of gratitude for her friendship and excited for her new adventure. The next few weeks flew by. I focused on work and Emma, on rebuilding our life, and if I found myself looking forward to parent-teacher conferences more than usual, well, that was nobody's business but my own. It was at one of these conferences that I found myself lingering, after the other parents had left, chatting with Isabel. "Emmy is doing much better," Isabel was saying. "Her essays show real depth and maturity." I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. "She's amazing. I don't know how she stayed so strong through everything." Isabel's hand brushed mine as she handed me Emma's latest paper she takes after her father. I think our eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to stand still. I cleared my throat. "Isabel, I was wondering, would you like to get coffee sometime outside of school?" I mean, her smile lit up the room. "I'd love to, Robert." As I left the school that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. The pain of Sarah's betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it no longer consumed me. I had survived, grown, and maybe, just maybe, I was ready to love again. The next weekend, I took Emma to the park. As we sat on a bench watching the ducks in the pond, she turned to face me. "Dad, are you happy?" I looked at my daughter, this incredible young woman who had weathered so much. "You know what I think I am? Are you?" She nodded, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Yeah, I mean I still miss Mom sometimes, but I'm glad we are okay." I wrapped my arm around her. "We're more than okay, kiddo. We're survivors." As the sun set over the park, I thought about the journey we've been on. The pain, the anger, the thirst for revenge, it had all led to this moment. I had lost a wife, but I gained something far more valuable, a deeper connection with my daughter, true friends, and the knowledge that I could weather any storm. The future stretched out before us, full of possibility, and for the first time in a long time I was excited to see where it might lead. Here is the next story. It was a wet and windy morning at her Aunt May's beach house. She had arrived there 3 days ago and had almost finished reading her first book on her Nook. After turning on her smartphone, she found one email from her daughter, which meant she knew, and no messages from Alex, which surprised her. But after all, she insisted she wanted to be completely alone and to only contact her if there was an emergency. And I knew that both her husband, Alex, and her daughter Megan would not understand why she wanted to be alone. He blew up when she told him about her plan to escape, and she had never in their 30-year marriage seen him so angry with her. He had always been the sweetest and caring man who cherished her like no other woman. But something was wrong with her. It didn't take her long to figure out that her 50th birthday coming up was a big part of her dilemma, but it was also her relationship with a new man. Henry had started at the insurance office where she had worked a few months ago. He was quite younger than her and had recently lost his wife to cancer. They had clicked together from day one and, without realizing it, started developing a close friendship. Within a few weeks, they started going out to lunch and started talking about very private feelings they had. It was the kiss that started it all. Neither planned to make their relationship physical. And I had never been with another man besides Alex, and she had never considered cheating with her strong Catholic upbringing. She kept her wedding vows sacred to her belief, knowing she could never hurt the man she loved wholeheartedly. 2 days after Henry kissed her, she realized she needed to get away and think about her life. Megan, 26, stopped by the house one evening and found him passed out on the living room floor. "Dad," she screamed as she turned him over. She initially assumed he was dead, but took a deep breath when his eyes opened and he smiled at her. "Am I in heaven and are you an angel?" She had never seen her father this drunk before, and she managed to get him to sit up and lean back against the sofa. After he drank some water, he eventually came around. "What's happening? Where is Mom?" She left me. She needed to find herself." Tears began to flow from his eyes, and he hugged his baby girl close to his body. "You aren't making sense. Why did she leave? Did you have an argument? Where's she gone?" "I will call her." She took her phone from her back pocket, but he grabbed it from her. "She does not want anyone to contact her because you want to be alone." "Oh God, I need to throw up." She got him for the downstairs restroom just in time for the next hour. She helped him clean up and eat something. "I'm going back to my apartment to get some clothes and toiletries, and we will be right back. Promise me you won't drink and do something stupid." "Wait, what's going on with you and Brian?" "He's history. He'd rather play video games than get a job." "I apologize, baby." "Oh, I forgot. She left you a letter, which is on the kitchen table. I did not read it." Megan left him sleeping for a while and read the letter. "Megan, I'm sorry for leaving your father in this situation, but I need to get away for a while. Please know that I love you both more than life itself, and I do not want either of you to believe otherwise. This escape is only about me. I need to solve problems that have been bothering me and can only do so on my own. I am staying at Auntie's beach house. Please do not come here and only contact me if there is an emergency. I have filled the refrigerator with easy-to-cook food. So please look after your father. I knew I should have told you about it, but I expected you to try to talk me out of it. I'm not sure how long I'll be away, and I've taken a leave of absence from my job. I'm confident this will be over soon. Whenever it is. Love, Mom. With her father asleep, with her asleep, she attempted to call her mother, but it went to voicemail. Mom. Dad is a complete wreck, and if I hadn't discovered him unconscious, I'm not sure he would have survived. Whatever you were thinking, you were completely wrong to do this to him. I hope you have a good time getting your thoughts together, and don't worry, I will not call you again. Alice sat on the balcony, overlooking the ocean and hearing the waves crash against the shore. She thought about Henry, who had apologized numerous times since the kiss. He explained that it was just something that happened and that he had no plans to take their friendship any further. But it was me. She spoke aloud. Tears streamed from her eyes as she tossed and turned, thinking about Henry and her husband. Update. Henry 131 attempted to contact her, but she did not return his call. He was deeply hurt that she was upset enough to take a leave of absence from work. Since his wife's death, he had built a wall around himself and avoided any relationship with another woman until he met her. At first she was just a smiling face telling you how wonderful your day was. But soon he was rushing to work to see her before the day began, making excuses to stop by her desk whenever possible. Suddenly his life had meaning again, and he had met someone who understood his loneliness. He burst into tears after eating lunch with his late wife on her birthday, when she gave him a hug and kiss. That was until a car horn woke them up and they quickly separated. We cannot do this. She dashed to the parking garage elevator and pressed the closed door button. A few days later he learned from her assistant that she was taking a leave of absence and traveling alone. Henry knew he needed to work things out within his family. He knew her husband and daughter were wondering what was wrong with her for leaving so abruptly. He went up to the front door and rang the doorbell. Megan heard the doorbell and wondered if it was her mother, but shouldn't she have the key? She opened it and discovered a young man standing on the front step. Can I help you? Henry realized this had to be the daughter I had spoken so highly of. You must be Megan. Do I know you? She asked suspiciously. I am Henry Martin and I work with your mother. Megan was already questioning whether her mother had left because of another man. What do you want? She asked angrily. I'd like to talk with you and your father. If you are who I believe you are, you should get the asterisk. LL move away from here. My mother is not here. I understand. That is why I'm here to explain. Megan was about to slam the door closed when her father pushed it open. Let him in as he slowly entered the house. Henry could see the anger and upset on their faces. Let us sit in the den, Alex said firmly. He too suspected she had left for another man. Alex and Megan sat on the sofa with Henry sitting across from them. Well, this is your show. Please move ahead. My name is Henry Martin. I work with her. He noticed both of them lean back and cross their arms. Alex clenched his fists. Are you both having an affair? You have a lot of nerve to come here. Did she send you something? Alex was prepared to attack. Henry raised his two hands to defend no to the affair and no. I have not contacted her since she left work last week, but we crossed the line and we kissed. I knew it. Megan gave a gasp. What are you about? Were you about 30 years old? Do you go around seducing older married women? Please believe me. That was not my intention. My wife died 2 years ago and I've been a wreck. It took me under her wing and has been trying to get me back. I will bet Alex let out a growl. Are you both in love? I've been asking myself the same question, and I have to admit that I really like Anna. But not in the way you thought. What is not to like? She has a huge heart and is a lovely person. We hadn't planned on kissing, and the moment it happened we both knew it was wrong. If I could, I would take it back right away. Why do you think she left the way she did? Oh, Alex inquired, now convinced the man was telling the truth. I know she loves you a lot and she has told me so many times. But she has also mentioned getting close to 50, which is clearly upsetting her. She must be confused about our relationship. What can we do? Should I just leave her alone or try to help her? Megan inquired, also believing the man. I've got an idea. Alex said Anna was settling in at the beach house but had not made any decisions about her future. The kiss threw her for a loop and made her question her desire to be with another man. But she didn't want to give up her life with Alex and would never cheat on him. She was preparing to nap on the balcony when she heard footsteps approaching a long flight of stairs. She felt a presence behind her and quickly turned to see Megan and Alex standing in the doorway. What are you doing here? She snapped at them. I told you that I wanted to be alone. Please leave now. We know about Henry, Mom. Megan said softly. But how nobody knows. And it was only a hey. Henry moved around to stand next to Alex and Megan. Oh God. Henry. What are you doing here? I told him everything. Anna. Henry said, his eyes filling with terror. We all worried about you. Her gaze fixed on Alex's face. I love you. Please don't assume I don't. Henry moved forward. Anna, I would never take you away from your family. I cherish our time together, but only as friends. I believe we both realized this after we kissed Megan, and the men waited for Anna's response, but she turned and walked to the balcony rail, looking out at the beach. Alex tapped Henry and Megan's shoulders, motioning backwards, and said, we'll be downstairs. And I heard their footsteps leaving the third floor. Everything was finally coming together for her. Agony was gradually subsiding. They sat in the kitchen drinking lemonade they discovered in the refrigerator without speaking. Finally, they noticed her walk into the doorway. Alex, would you like to join me for a walk on the beach? She asked. His expression conveyed his concern that she would deliver bad news. Megan squeezed his hand as he stood, then followed his wife down the back steps. They walked in silence until she began to cry and said, I'm so sorry. Even though he was upset and sad, he understood her pain. It's fine, he whispered as he drew her into him. I understand that you are in love with another man. Tears streamed down his cheeks as well, but she pushed him back, grabbed both of his shoulders and looked into his eyes. No, you huge dummy. I only love you. But I thought Henry was correct. We care for each other, but not as much as I love you. I thought I had lost you. Baby, he whispered. Never. Never. I am yours forever. Epilogue. Henry and Megan returned to their home age, while Anna and Alex stayed and celebrated their second honeymoon during her 50th birthday celebration. Alex was about to make a toast when Megan entered with her boyfriend. Wait before you toast. Megan smiled. She turned to her. Only true love. Henry asked me to marry him and I agreed. The end story too. It did not count because it was unplanned. Greg arrived home about 4 p.m. 2 hours earlier than usual. He noticed his wife George's car was not in the garage, which was unusual given that she high school and returned home around 3 p.m. They had been happily married for 9 years and were celebrating their 10th anniversary at a week Saturday by neighborhood clubhouse. Most of their nearby friends and family were invited to the celebration, which they had worked hard to organize. She waited another hour, became concerned that something bad had happened to her and called her phone. Went to voicemail, so he left a message. Hey babe, I came home early to help with the party favors and found the house empty. I'm concerned about you because you usually text me when you arrive late. Please call me as soon as you can. Love you. He was just about to call her other teacher friends when he heard the garage door open. He opened the garage door and saw her get out of her car. Where were you? I've been worried. Sick. Why are you home so early? You usually don't get home until after 6 and it's only a little after 5. He noticed her elbows were soiled brown with green grass marks, as were her jean knees. She dressed casually because it was a casual occasion Friday at her school. Did you play tackle football at your school? She looked down at her dirty spot. No, I'll tell you all about it. But first I need to take a shower. I had a flat tire and one of the nice nail teachers helped me change. It's in the trunk, so maybe you can take it later to have it repaired. Tony claimed it had a nail in it, so you got grass and dirt stains. While you were on the ground helping to change the tire. She laughed. No. That's silly. I got the stain. After rewarding Tony for helping me change the tire, she grabbed her purse and walked past her stunned, frozen husband. He snapped out of it and cautiously moved upstairs, discovering her jeans on the floor of their bedroom. The bathroom door was partially open, allowing him to see her shirt drop by her feet along with her matching white bra. A few seconds later he heard the shower door slide open and the water come on. "Who are you?" he inquired. As he saw her enter the hot running water again, he was shocked to see red large handprints on her. It was obvious that someone had spanked her. "How did those markings appear on yours?" asterisk. "I'm your wife. Tony called me a bad girl. I enjoyed it, so we'll have to try it the next time. We have love." She chuckled. "Duck. I do not believe this. How can you laugh and claim you didn't cheat on me? Are you crazy? It was not planned. It just happened. There were no kisses. It was pure animal lust and we couldn't stop it." He ducked. "You bear back no protection. You must be insane because you could be pregnant and have STDs. "I do not think so." He claimed he'd never done this before and he has only been with his wife. And he revealed that he had a vasectomy. What, you still don't think? You committed adultery by avoiding him 3 times. You're nuts. I wish you wouldn't use the FW. You know I dislike it. And because it was not planned, there was no malice towards you or our marriage. You don't want to hear me say, duck, but you let another man have sex with you. Honey, I don't love him. When you and I do this, we make love. This was simply physical lust meeting our needs. I needed to reward him. He needed to please me. Did he? Did he what please you? Duh, okay. Yeah. It was exciting to feel bigger. It's been going on for nearly an hour now. Of course, I climaxed several times, so don't think we'll do it tonight. I am too sore and it feels like he stretched me out, so I wouldn't be able to feel you. There is no chance of that happening. Now that I'm a total asterisk guest, when you're finished cleaning, you can begin packing. Well, okay. Are we going on a trip? There were actually 2 trips. You're going to your parents' house and I'll be going to see my lawyer tomorrow there. It is finally out of me. She smiled. Sorry. What did you say about my parents' lawyer? I'm saying I am going to divorce you because of your cheating. You need assistance. But baby, it meant nothing to me. I have done this before and you have never complained. What came before? Remember a few years ago when your friend Tom helped me paint the downstairs bathroom? I told you I was going to reward him. Reward him? I thought you had made him his favorite cookies. I did, but he requested more, so I gave it to him. It was not planned. It just happened like today. And it did not happen again with him. With him. Damn that. Who else? Georgia. She could tell he was an asterisk staffer and it was not going well. I think I should stop talking because you're losing it. I will tell you about Bobby and Randy another time. I have 2 brothers. Are you cheating? As asterisk, be asterisk. That is it. Get dressed. You have 10 minutes to collect your belongings and get out of my sight. Greg, you're being unreasonable about this. I never kissed one of them. He screamed before turning and running out of the room. She sighed and went out to dress. I guess I shouldn't tell him about Preacher John and Mr. Wilson, the school principal. I heard the epilogue. Why are you looking here? So what do you think happened? What would you say if you read this? He absolved her. They lived happily ever after. Sorry, it did not happen. But Greg beat the crap out of his 2 brothers and never spoke to them again. Oh yes, his friend to MK face collided with a dot and he lost 5 teeth. Poor old Mr. Wilson was found passed out drunk in the middle of the gym floor. The preacher. Well, He confessed to the congregation and went on a retreat, a long one. Georgia. Well, let's say that she's still distributing her cookies and still lives with her parents. Want to give her a helping hand? Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.